आ गया इनको याद है ना
इसको बोल लाइक कर ले आया अगर तू है तो लाइक कर साथ के साथ लिख दिखाओ उसको समझ जाएगा क्या करना है अबे ऐसे नहीं जाएगा
अभी क्या होता है पर दो वॉचिंग था पहले मैं भी
तो आया नहीं ना
अबे तू यहाँ से दिखाएगा ऊपर जाके दिखा यार
ना ये लाइट नहीं पड़ सकता हां लाइट चैप्टर नहीं पढ़ा पढ़ा है अब मैं नहीं जा
भाई मैंने तो लाइक किया है मैं उसे दिखाएंगे यार
ये दूसरी वाली वीडियो है पहले वाले में
अच्छा पहले वाले में किया था
हां देखना
अबे मैंने पूरा देखा था ग्राफ टेन में स्कूल कोऑर्डिनेशन मैं बोली थी जब वाला स्टार्ट सेक्शन इंट्रोडक्शन आफ्टर इसमें को सब याद है
एक से याद वही
अरे नहीं व्हाट यू हैव टू याद है अभी इसको मैंने फोटो भी लिया है सेम इसी का था अरे यार अबे करनी है ना करनी है तो परसों भी एक टी-शर्ट पहनना था अभी
वो टी-शर्ट नहीं हो रही है हमारा नहीं लिया
अभी देखिए नहीं था
नहीं क्या आप करेंगे ठीक है तो रेडी कर
अरे मैंने देखा क्वेश्चन नंबर 7 क्वेश्चन नंबर 20 क्वेश्चन नंबर 25 मार्क कराया था
ये बोला कि सही है
26 कर रहा था फायदा
अरे दो था ना डिफरेंशिएट बिटवीन बाइनरी फंक्शन एंड बाइनरी फंक्शन एंड लेवल के साथ
हां
बड़ी डायग्राम है इसका भाई को समझ आ रहा है
बहुत याद है
मैं डेडिकेटेड एक लास्ट AIR 1 सिटी नेक्स्ट
मेरे पास में भी बैठे
बड़ा फाइट देगा पार्ट लीजिएगा वो खरीदना है
ले भाई कुत्ता नहीं है तो मैं
अबे राहुल डॉगी को
अरे बिल्कुल किस ला रहा है ये पार्ले जी भी तब मैं खाने बिस्किट
अरे यार ऑनलाइन खाना में व्यूज बचपन की आवाज आ रहा है बहुत करते हैं ऑनलाइन में
तब मैं खा लिया आता से
मैदा से बना
ये दिखा
हां गाइस को रिफाइंड आता है
इंग्रेडिएंट व्हीट फ्लावर और एक
एक मिनट में शुरू हो जाना है हमारे बजा केले पास से चार निकल जाएंगे काले
भाई आज का कर देगा 10 रुपए का
किधर
भाई 100 मिलेगा
इधर वो वाले
हमारे सभी होंगे
दाएं पे लेते हैं और दिस अच्छा जाने के टाइम पे नया करना
सप्लाई
क्या
तो गीले हो क्या ये वो चौका नहीं
एक्सपर्ट जल्दी आ
यस
मैगी का पैकेट बनाया
आई डोंट नो
हां लाइक द आई नो बनाया उसने
तूने मेरे को काफी पास नहीं देखा है मैं एक अगर 5 से भी मैंने करना है कर हाँ मुझे नहीं होता मुझे एक्सप्रेशन मैं बोल रही हूँ नेक्स्ट क्लास अगला लेक्चर भाई नेक्स्ट
बोलेगी ठीक है
क्या तुमको किधर तो बोल रही थी तो तुम खा रहे थे हम लेस खा रहे
मेरे को पता था बॉडी नहीं होना था बट फिर होता है
है ना?
मराठी लैंग्वेज
हाँ
ऑनेस्टली
क्या ठीक है तुम क्या बोल रहे थे खा ले
नहीं देते परसेंट मैंने खाना भी खाया
आपको कच्चे के लिए था
क्या थे क्या
कच्चे के लिए
कंट्री
कच्चे के लिए
अच्छा अपने कच्चे केले कर
अपने
यही मेरा में क्या था
तूने बड़ा देखना
लॉस ऑफ
ट्रांसपोर्टेशन
फोकस करना मेरा बात है वो मत
तुम ही बोल रहे हो
ट्रांसपोर्टेशन ब्रांच
चल के
अब सक्शन को लिए
अच्छा, मैंने
मेरा पूरा ये खराब हो गया
थैंक यू फॉर द एक तुम मुझे वो देगी
नहीं सॉरी
नहीं चाहिए
मैंने शेयर कर दिया
भाई लाल देख रहे मैंने
क्या चाहिए
ये नहीं सी
ये
हाँ
मतलब मैं डालिया
मैं चिंता कर दिया
नहीं देखिए कभी
मैंने वाला बीच में
हां वो तो मैं
तू खाओ
ऑफ कोर्स
तू खाओ तू
मैं चाहता तो मैं बोलूंगा मैं
थैंक यू सो मच
तेरे पास
तुरंत बारी है आपको पास
डेडिकेशन सर ये राउंड तो भाई अभी रात को होने वाला है
क्यों नहीं होगा
रात का होगा पहले तो मतलब थोड़ा टाइम लग जाता है
ये तो बहुत टाइम
Okay, so now we start with certain features, characteristics to remember when we are talking about sexual reproduction. The first thing, when we discussed about the differences of sexual, asexual, then also you are there also going to come across. If it is a concept of sexual reproduction, what are some of the characteristics? The characteristics would be the first, in case of sexual reproduction, the formation of gametes. Here we understand that the process of sexual reproduction involves always the formation of gametes. So formation of gametes is a major requisite. The formation of gametes by the process of meiosis. By the process of meiosis, the formation of gametes by the process of meiosis is a major requisite whenever we are talking about sexual reproduction. Now next is meiosis. By the process of meiosis, what are some of the features you still remember about meiosis? We said if it is meiosis, the parent cell will always give rise to four daughter cells. What about the chromosome number we had come across?
It will half.
23.
It will be reduced to half. Now, certain words to remember again, that if I am talking about a cell of the reproductive organs, so now, okay, before that, what are the reproductive organs then? Talking about a concept of the reproductive organs form gametes. What are the reproductive organs? In case of a plant, if we start understanding for a plant first, for a plant, the reproductive organs would be the anther, which is producing the male gamete by the way of the pollen, the ovary, which is producing the female gametes, and the ovary would be producing the egg cell. Again, there are certain processes we have to learn. So that is for a plant. Let us talk about for the human. We are going to study for the human also. In case of a plant, the reproductive organ and the name of the gamete has to be very clearly understood. The human, in case of the human, the organ, testis, and the gamete, the sperms. For the male, for the female, the organ, ovary, and the gamete, ovum. Then, before we understand the process, the methods, the parts, etc., we have to be very clear that if it is a concept of sexual reproduction, something more always. What are the characteristics of the gametes? That again to be understood. I talk about the cell of a reproductive organ, and this cell of the reproductive organ, I talk about a cell of the reproductive organ, and I understand that there are 12 chromosomes. Formation of gametes always by the way of meiosis. We have just discussed it yesterday. So each of the cells which are formed are containing half of the chromosomes. Yes, these are definitely known as gametes. These are definitely known as gametes. But now there's a concept again to understand that the parent cell which is undergoing the process of cell division, we would say what is the number of the chromosome? The number of the chromosome is this way to mention, that is twice the half set of the chromosome is 12. That means what is the diploid? This is known as the diploid condition. What is the meaning? Diploid condition means? Diploid condition means if this is the cell understood in the nuclear region, how many? 12. That means 1 and 1, 1 and 1. The chromosomes are all arranged this way. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They're all in the form of pairs. They are all in the form of pairs. So when we are talking about this chromosome in one of the stages, this will be a situation. Okay, let me just show you straight from the beginning. 12, if I say that 1 and then 2 and then 3 and then 4 and then 5 and then 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So these are the 12 chromosomes. But we are talking about a cell of the reproductive organ. The features of the cell of a reproductive organ and the cell of the skin and the liver and the bone will be a little bit different. Where if it is a cell of the testis or the anther or the ovary, the chromosomes will always pair up first and then enter into the process of division, like what I had drawn earlier. So first, to understand, when a cell has got the complete chromosome number, for this cell 12, so this complete chromosome number of a cell is known as the diploid chromosome number of a cell. Diploid meaning the complete chromosome count. Okay, then after the process of meiosis, we are talking about meiosis, remember? We are talking about meiosis because gamete formation is only by meiosis. After the process of meiosis, now each of them contain how many chromosomes? Meiosis reduced to half. So 1 and then 2 and then 3 and then 4 and then 5 and then 6. This is the situation in each of them. The number of chromosomes we will write is 6. Now, what is this condition known as? This condition is known as the haploid condition of a cell. So now gametes are always haploid and the reproductive cells are always diploid. Gametes are haploid, reproductive cells are diploid. Reproductive cells are haploid and the reproductive parent cells are always diploid, and now that they undergo meiotic division, the cells are this way, haploid chromosome number. What are these cells known as? Gametes. Is this gamete capable of showing division on its own and growth on its own? No, because it has got just half of the chromosome. So it cannot undergo the process of division, growth on its own. But it will be when it undergoes a process of fusion with another cell of the same chromosome number. If this gamete fuses with another gamete of the same chromosome number, then it can, forming a zygote of by the process of fertilization, then again having the chromosome number 16, then it can. So what are the characteristics of the gametes to understand? What are the characteristics of the gametes? Number one is, gametes are cells formed by the process of meiosis. Gametes are always haploid. Gametes do not have independent existence, whether I talk about the flower or the human or any organism. Gametes individually, they have got a very short lifespan. 1 day, 2 days, that's it. So that means this gamete cannot survive on its own. Why? What is the reason they cannot survive on its own? Because they always have a haploid chromosome count. What is the meaning of haploid? Just half the chromosome than the reproductive cell, the cell of the reproductive organ. And then when will they, is there any chance that they are capable of continuing the process of existence? Yes, provided they undergo fertilization. If they undergo fertilization, then the chromosome number is restored, then yes. We will have to write down certain important things, these concepts right from the start. If it is clear, when I pronounce these words, you are understanding. A diploid and a haploid cell. You'll have to remember this. Diploid and haploid. Make a table. Diploid cell and haploid cell. Diploid and haploid. Make a table. Fast. Diploid and a haploid cell. Difference. The meaning also at the same time. I'll give you the definition also and which types of cells, what chromosome number, everything you have to remember. Diploid cells and haploid cells. Take the spelling right. Cells of the anther and the ovary are diploid. Haploid. I'll tell you. I'm asking number. Okay, this I'll explain a number of times. The words you should be able to catch when I'm speaking. The words you should know the meaning. I'll tell you again. Not to worry. Now, okay. So the first one for diploid cell, right? Cells which contain two half sets of chromosomes. Cells which contain two half sets of chromosomes or the complete set of chromosomes. Or the complete set of chromosomes. Other side, haploid. Cells which contain only one half set of chromosomes. Cells which contain only one half set of chromosomes. Okay. Now, Point number 2. Diploid. For diploid, cells of the reproductive organs. Cells of the reproductive organs are diploid. Example, cells of the anther, testes, ovary. Other side, haploid. Cells which are gametes. Gamete is also a single cell. Cells which are gametes are haploid. That is, the pollen, that is the pollen, egg cell, sperms,
Excel.
egg cell.
Excel.
Egg cell तो कहाँ पे यहाँ पे भी egg cell. Egg cell. Egg cell, sperms, etc. Clear? All of you wrote correct?
Yes.
So now, what is the definition you wrote? If it is a diploid cell, you wrote 1, 2 half sets of the chromosome. 2 half sets meaning what? 12 is 6 plus 6. 6 is 1 half set. So 6 plus 6 हो गया ना 12. So that's why it is always mentioned this way. What is haploid? 1 half set of the chromosome which the gametes will contain. But the reproductive cells will always contain 2 half sets. 6 plus 6, 8 plus 8, 23 plus 23, 20 plus 20. So if the gametes of an animal has 20 chromosomes, how many chromosomes are there in the cells of the testis? 40. If in the ovum, female gamete of an animal has got 18 chromosomes, how many chromosomes in the cells of the ovary?
36.
Understood the concept? So ये 18 हो गया, 1 half set haploid. That 36 is 2 half sets diploid. Understood that concept? Understood that concept? Huh? So whatever be the number, now all organisms have got different variable chromosome numbers. For us, what is the story? 46, I'm sorry, 23, 46. 23, 46. So this little bit in genetics also you have studied in the entire concept of sex determination. That's why I have segregated the concept and I had explained to you that. So now when we are talking about this concept, then what are the major 4 characteristics of the gametes? Now that we are talking about sexual reproduction, gametes are a major concept to understand. Number 1, gametes are unicellular always. Gametes are unicellular. Then what is the difference between an ovum and an amoeba? Amoeba भी तो unicellular है. Ovum और amoeba में difference क्या है?
Ovum has chromosome genetic material, but amoeba does not.
कैसे नहीं? You had studied nuclear division. Amoeba is a single cell and at the same time a complete organism. It has got the full chromosome number. अगर 2 chromosome है तो that is the diploid number. How about a sperm? How about an ovum? I differentiated with an ovum.
23.
Ovum is not carrying the complete chromosome number of that organism. Ovum is containing only half of the chromosome number. A cell with the half of the chromosome number can never on its own multiply and grow. It is dependent on another cell. अगर fertilization हुआ, then they can proceed again. अगर नहीं हुआ, it will just die out. So I asked you, you will get this type of questions also. What is the difference between, now see, this ovum is also unicellular, that amoeba is also unicellular, but one unicellular organism, that amoeba is a complete organism because the chromosomes are in the diploid state. Full chromosome है उसके पास. भले 4 chromosome है, but that 4 chromosome is that full chromosome count. But if I talk about the ovum has just 23. That is not the full chromosome count of the organism. We have got 46. So एक particular cell पूरा absent है. So this cell is not capable of individual growth and multiplication. Understanding? Now that is one. Then again, when we are talking about every particular gamete has got a lifespan. But how much is the lifespan? How much is the lifespan? 1 to 2 days. So within this period, if fertilization happens, then the continuity of the race. Whether it is a flower, plant, or we are talking about an animal, the rule is almost the same. Then the third thing that I talked about is gametes. In certain cases, gametes are motile. What is the meaning? Motile. They can move on their own. Yes, especially when we talk about animals, not for plants. In case of animals, we are going to come across later again. I'll take that separately once I finish with this. In case of animals, the gametes can be motile also. They can keep moving on their own. So, what are some of the requisites? What are some of the points for the gamete I'm talking about? Gametes are always unicellular.
They have incomplete
Always they have got haploid. Use these words. Always they have got haploid chromosomes. They may or may not be motile. They are not capable of cell division and growth. On their own. They are not capable of cell division and growth on their own, and they have got a very short lifespan. Yeah. So this 4 to 5 points that you have to remember. Now we move on to understand the process, the parts in case of the plant. Now in case of a plant, what is the reproductive? We had already studied the vegetative parts of a plant, right? The vegetative parts, what did we study? What is the meaning of the word vegetative? Vegetative parts of a plant means that these are the parts of the plant which
are capable of growth, growing,
giving rise to a new plant without fertilization. So इसमें fertilization की कोई जरूरत नहीं है. The root can give rise to a new plant. The leaf can give rise to a new plant. The stem can give rise to a new plant. If we ever talk about any pollination processes or fertilization, the processes are simple, vegetative propagation. But now that we are going to talk about the flower and its parts. What are the major parts of the flower? What is its function? Let us come across. See the structure of the flower now. What is the definition of the flower that you are to write? The definition of the flower that we write is, flower is a reproductive shoot. The flower is a reproductive shoot. Now, this flower, which is a reproductive shoot, why do we consider it is a reproductive shoot? It is a part which contains the reproductive organs. Let us learn from the figure first. What are the parts of the flower? The flower has got 4 major parts. What are these 4 major parts known as? The 4 whorls of the flower. The 4 whorls of the flower. What are the 4 whorls of the flower? Number 1, the calyx or the sepal. The calyx or the sepal. Characteristics क्या है? Sepal, green in color. It is green in color. Number, generally 5 or multiples of 5. That is the basic number of the sepal. What is its function? What is the function of the sepal? The function of the sepal is to protect the flower when it was in a bud state. The sepal, whenever we talk about, the sepal is always protecting. All of you must have seen the rose buds. And that is true for all the other type of flower buds also. This sepal, when the flower is mature and the flower is blooming, then the sepal come at the base. Otherwise, the sepal is all protecting the bud of the flower. So when we are talking about the characteristics of the sepal, what are the characteristics? Number 1, the sepal, green in color. Then next is 5 or multiples of 5. Function, protecting the bud and carries out photosynthesis also. 2 functions. Carries out photosynthesis also. Second, I talk about the petals. What about the petals there? The petals are the brightly colored part of the flower, prominent, big, showy. And they are bright colored. Function, attract agents for pollination. Next, we talk about the anther. Can you see this? The anther. The major part, the main part of the flower, the anther, But every anther will be remaining attached to the base of the flower. What is the base of the flower known as? Thalamus, or the receptacle, thalamus. So this anther will remain attached to the base with the help of some fine thread-like structures, filament. The anther and the filament together will form the stamen. The anther and the filament together will form the stamen, and that is the main reproductive part of the flower. Where the anther in this figure, it is very clear, the anther is having two parts, two lobes. The anther is having two lobes. And inside these lobes, the process of pollen formation takes place. There are some sac-like structures known as the pollen sac, where the pollen formation will happen. Looking to the female part, what are the parts? First of all, we talk about the swollen base, known as the ovary. The ovary, if we cut in a section, we get to see that from flower to flower, the structure will vary, what species we are talking about, but every time the flower will always have, the ovary will always have some sections which are known as the ovule. The ovules are the sections of the ovary, and inside the ovule, we come across the process of fertilization happen. We'll see that later also. Then the entire neck-like structure which emerges out from the ovary and protrudes out of the flower, this is known as the style. The entire flask-shaped, neck-shaped, long tubular structure, that is known as the style. And what does this style? Yesterday also with reference to chemotropism, yesterday or day before, I think I must have showed you this one again. So this is the style of the flower. What is the style consisting of? The style consists of packed nutrients and help the pollen to grow. That's the major function of the style. It has the preserved nutrients packed in it. The uppermost region known as the stigma. The stigma is always sticky and hairy and wavy, so that the pollen grains can always come and get trapped there, attached there. The stigma of a flower, if it is slant and if it is straight, is actually a improper characteristic for that flower. That's a deformity for the flower. The stigma should always be wavy, and it should always be hairy, and it should always be sticky, so that whenever the pollen fly and are rushed by the air, enough number gets attached to the stigma, carry out the process of pollination, germination, and followed by fertilization. So what are the parts of the flower? We'll have to understand all the functions also now nicely. For that, I'll be drawing the diagram here. All of you take out your pencils and draw the diagram. Take out your pencils, no colors for you. You'll have to only use pencil for drawing your diagrams. All of you will draw the diagram in half of the page. Proper labeling. Now this is again a very, very important and a very common diagram which comes in the paper for 3 marks along with some questions, labelings. So see there, when we are talking about this particular diagram, very simple, but the proper labeling. Certain things, let me tell you, when I think before also when we had drawn diagrams for life processes, I told you whenever you're drawing a diagram, it should be a bit away from the center, not very small, not too large, and appreciable almost half of the page, little bit more than half of the page is okay, but not big giant diagrams you should draw. And try putting your label as much possible neatly on the right side. Sometimes 1 or 2 on the left side is okay. Don't cut across the diagram to label anything. Examiners consider that as a cancelled diagram. You will get a 0 for that diagram. So don't cut across, meaning I want to label this part. Stigma. So I'm just cutting through and labeling here. That is not done at all. Don't ever do that. You'll not be able to justify later. No, you have cut it. That's why I did not give you a mark. So don't do that at all. Labels always, the entire diagram should never be cancelled. Don't cut across a diagram to label any part. Let us draw the diagram now. With the help of pencil only to draw, no drawing with pen. start. The functions you will write separately. I'm writing it here already, as I've explained you here. I'm writing down the functions here, but when you label the parts, the LS of the flower, the longitudinal section of the flower, you just write down the parts and complete the diagram. Functions you write after that. After the diagram, separately you write down. This chapter is started in school. Parts, along with the parts, you will not write the functions, you write it later. Fast, fast. Clear? Is this part understood? Parts of the, done? Write down all the points, the functions are very good. Now write down the functions for each of the parts, what I have mentioned, what I have explained, the same thing I have written down also on the board. All of you will take down the functions.
I'm done.
Diagram done. Label karo, and then write down the functions. So when you are drawing your diagram, since I have written down the functions, third point on this one, carries out, put where I have written. So now when you are drawing the diagram, these functions I have written, so that's why I haven't marked. When you draw the diagram, the stigma style and the ovaries on one side, you will have to bracket this entire part together. You bracket this entire part together, and then what will you write here is carpal, also known as piston. Okay, and this part you are writing down all this separately. So this part you will bracket up together and you will write stamen. Characteristics done. 5 minutes. All of you finish up so that now we can study the method of fertilization, pollination, and the rest. Heredity we are done, right? Are you comfortable with the laws? The crosses? Crosses, are you comfortable with?
Yes.
Yes? Done, make it fast now.
Ma'am, can you explain that second law of Mendel second law?
Not understood, right? Not understood.
Not on the second law.
Achha.
Third law of heredity of gametes.
Okay, so now if you see the structure of the flower now, there are four major parts. Can you see the four major parts will be? I start from the calyx. What are the four major parts of the flower, and which are known as the four folds of the flower? So which are the ones? The first one, the calyx. All of you must have written all these. The calyx, also the second major function, photosynthesis and protection. The characteristics easily identified. We would say that these are the leaf-like structures. Why not the leaf proper? Because they don't have the veins and the arrangement of the veins and the veinlets not there. They are just green leaf-like structures without the veins and all. So leaf-like. Petals, major function, attract agents for pollination.
Attracts pollen.
Majorly in all the flowers we come across, they are bright color, scented also quite a number of times. But in certain features we will come across if the flower has to be pollinated by agents like the wind and the water, then the flower need not be bright color. So we do come across flowers which are white, and flowers which are having petals which are small. And always remember, the flowers which have got big showy petals, bright color petals, are always pollinated by the insects and other organisms. Talking about now the female part of the flower known as the carpel or the pistil. What are its individual parts? What are its components? What are its individual parts? The stigma, there's a specific function for the stigma, you should remember. The style, there's a specific function, it's loaded with nutrients so that the formation of the pollen tube and the germination can happen. And then the ovary. The ovary has got chambers, and the chambers of the ovary known as the ovule, which can undergo the process of fertilization, seed formation later. The other side, the male part of the flower. What is the male part of the flower known as? The stamen. What are the components? The anther, filament. Now this anther, when we are talking about the anther, we always draw the anther this way, showing that it's a bilobed structure, two parts put together. And inside, when we look into the section of the anther, we get to see that the anther has got small sac-like structures inside, known as the pollen sacs, where the process of formation of the pollen grains happen. And later, the formation of the male gamete will continue on the stigma. And then the filament, fine thread-like structures. Now, here we are drawing one type of a flower. Here we are drawing that the filament arise from the base of the thalamus, from the base of the ovary. But for every flower, it may not be like that. For quite a number of flowers, the filaments start from here. The filament would all arise from the body of the style. So these are the two conditions. Sometimes we come across the filament and the anther all here, sometimes from the base. Now we try understanding that the flower, what is its job in a plant? Its job in a plant is to undergo the process of fertilization, form a seed, form a fruit. But then every particular plant, when it contains a number of flowers, is it necessary that every flower will undergo the process of fertilization? Every flower will form a fruit? No. If a plant has got almost about 50-60 flowers, out of that, 50% of the plants only generally form a fruit. Why? Because they are all dependent on certain factors. Insects, or the wind, or the water, for the transfer of the pollen grains at the right time, because these are pollen and the sperms, just now I mentioned also, they are gametes and they will have a short lifespan during which they are functional. So within a particular period of time, if they are coming in contact with the male gamete, the male coming in contact with the female gamete, then only fertilization. So first of all, we'll learn a short concept, a small concept on pollination. Before we learn the process of fertilization in a flower, how does fertilization happen in a flower, we'll have to learn what is pollination. What is pollination? The transfer of the pollen grains, if I now understand that the pollen grains are all released from the anther. The pollen grain will come in contact with the stigma. The characteristics of the stigma I mentioned, that the stigma is generally hairy and wavy and sticky, so that adequate number of the pollen grain can remain attached, allow the growth, and later allow the process of fertilization. So what is the definition of pollination that you write? Transfer of the pollen grain from the anther to the stigma. Transfer of the pollen grain from the anther to the stigma, that is pollination. But there are two types of pollination if I talk about a plant. And this plant has got the flower. The flowers are arranged this way, and there is another type of a plant. And here I understand the process of pollination. So this is A and B. Both of them are of related species. These two plants that I understand, A and B, they are of related species, meaning what? They may be types of hibiscus, the pink and the blue, the pink and the yellow, the red and the white, that way. But can I think of pollination ever possible between the maybe the flowers of the lily and the flowers of the hibiscus? No, difficult. They are not related flowers. So whenever we are talking about pollination, we always keep in mind that pollination will always be favorable provided the transfer of the pollen has happened between two related flowers, almost of the same genus. The flowers have to be of the same genus, related species. So if the process of the transfer of the pollen grain is happening within the same flower, the transfer of the pollen grain is happening within the same flower, then what is this method known as?
Self-pollination.
Self-pollination. Then what type of flower is it? This type of a flower is generally bisexual flower, meaning the anther also is there and the female part, the stigma and everything, that is also there. So the process of pollination is happening within the same flower, indicating that this flower is definitely a bisexual flower. Okay, that is self-pollination. What about the type of pollination here now? One flower to another flower. So how do we define the transfer of the pollen grain?
Cross-pollination.
The transfer of the pollen grain from the anther of one flower to the stigma of another flower. What is it? This is self-pollination. This is also self-pollination. As long as the plant is the same, it is a concept of self-pollination always. So whether we are talking about within the same flower or two flowers of the same plant, this is always self-pollination. This is always self-pollination. So what are the basic concepts of self-pollination? Transfer of pollen grains from one flower to another, or transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of the same flower of the same plant. As long as the plant is the same, the process of transfer, the process of pollination carried out is self. Then how cross-pollination? This is cross-pollination. Now, how do we define what is cross-pollination? The transfer of the pollen from the anther of one flower to the stigma of another flower of another plant. The plant, when they are different, never mind they are of the same type, related genus, different related species. But the moment it is two different plants, it is cross-pollination. I may talk about pollination between two hibiscus, both giving rise to red flowers, then also cross-pollination. I talk about two hibiscus, both yellow. I talk about two mangoes of the same type, but the plant is different. Never mind, the species is same. The moment the plant is different, it is a concept of cross-pollination. But yes, cross-pollination again can be of different types. So that we are not talking this now. This much only to talk about, this much only to know as of now. What is the major difference between cross and self-pollination? Please write down. What is the difference between cross and self-pollination? Very clearly, this should be very clearly remembered. Difference between cross and self. Difference between cross and self, and that also gives us an idea about the type of the flowers. Which type of flowers majorly show cross, which type of flowers majorly show self. Right now, for self-pollination, for self-pollination, right? Process of transfer of pollen grain, process of transfer of pollen grain from anther to stigma, transfer of pollen grain from the anther to the stigma of the same flower. I'm sorry, a process of transfer of the pollen grain from the anther to the stigma of the same flower, or between two flowers of the same plant, or between two flowers of same plant. You get questions with diagrams here, and you should be able to very clearly identify which is cross, which is self. Go the other side. Cross-pollination, transfer of pollen grains from the anther of one flower to the stigma of another flower. Transfer of pollen grains from the anther of one flower, to the stigma of another flower of a different plant. Is cross-pollination. Second point. Second point is for self-pollination takes place in majorly bisexual flowers. Self-pollination takes place in bisexual flowers. Cross-pollination takes place in cross-pollination takes place in unisexual or bisexual flowers. Cross-pollination majorly in unisexual, to remember. Now, here, when we are talking about the concept of flowers, now that we are talking about the concept of the pollination and flowers, what is the basic concept? Unisexual, bisexual flowers. A unisexual flower will have only stamen or only the pistil. Example of a unisexual flower: the papaya, the palm. These are unisexual flowers. Contrast, bisexual flowers will always possess both stamen and carpel. Some very good examples of bisexual: hibiscus, the pea flower, hibiscus flowers. These are bisexual flowers. Now we are going to understand that in the entire process of pollination, after the process of pollination, what is the fate of the flower? If the process of pollination has happened, then what should happen to the flower later? So now, when we are trying to understand that the process of pollination has happened, and after the process of pollination, what should happen to the flower is, the flower will undergo a method known as fertilization. But for a flower, the method is known as double fertilization. What is the concept of double fertilization? To understand the concept of double fertilization, we now need to know only the male and the female part of the flower. So I may talk about, say suppose this was what we were drawing earlier also, the anther. So now if this is an anther and then the release of the pollen grain and then the pollen grain sit on the stigma. So we understand from here. So the pollen grain getting germinated, meaning the pollen grain starts its process of development, forming the male gamete. It starts its development forming the male gamete. So when we are now talking about the process of development of the pollen grain, let me see if I have a picture I'll show you. There's a diagram on the section of the carpel and double fertilization. Please stick the diagram. Now you draw rough diagram with me, but then you'll have to practice that diagram also. So we start with the process of pollination, and now this pollen grain is here on the stigma. This pollen grain is here on the stigma, and this pollen grain, which is a single cell structure, comes in contact with the stigma. Down there, when we are talking about the other characteristics of the ovary, what are the other characteristics? The ovary has got the ovule, and then there will be certain characteristics of the ovule, that is the male and the female gametes also parallelly will have to understand for the ovule, for the ovary, as well as the stamen. So let us take one by one. So the gametes, first of all, in case of the ovary, 1, 2, we'll learn the names now. 1, 2, 3, and then 1, and then 2. So these are the gametes of the ovary. What about the ovule that side? The ovule will, the pollen that side, the pollen will start its growth. So let us start with the male gamete first. What are we learning? We are learning a concept known as double fertilization. That is the topic under reproduction. We are learning a topic known as double fertilization. What is the definition? You will have to remember. You'll be able to write this definition once you are aware about the method. What happens? First is, let us talk about the pollen. The anther has produced the pollen. The anther produced the pollen. Now, what is the fate of this pollen grain? This single pollen grain, it will undergo a process of growth and maturation on the stigma, utilizing the nutrients of the style. We already mentioned what is the function of the style there. So this pollen starts its growth and first of all results in the formation of a small pollen tube. What about this single nucleus then? This single nucleus now starts dividing. This single nucleus now starts dividing and results in the formation of two nuclei. What are these two nuclei known as? These two nuclei are known as the generative nucleus, and the second is known as the vegetative nucleus. So I am saying the nucleus of the pollen will divide to form the generative and the vegetative nucleus. What next? This pollen will again start, it will continue the formation of its tube-like structure. The pollen tube is getting formed. What will happen to the generative nucleus? The generative nucleus still divides to form 2 more nuclei. What about the vegetative? It remains at the end of the pollen tube. And during the process of formation of the male gamete, the nutrients are all used up. So after the entire process of germination of the pollen, this vegetative nucleus is no more there. And we get to see only the 2 male gametes. So what are these? These are the 2 male nuclei. These are the 2 male gametes. What about this? This is the vegetative nucleus, which will be used up later and it will disappear. It will not be there after a particular period of time. Okay, this is about the anther. This is about the anther, how the male gametes. What about the ovary, that side? If I talk about the ovary now, the ovary also in the ovule will start formation of 1 single ovule. If I consider the ovary has a number of chambers depending on which fruit, which flower we are talking about. Certain flowers may have 6, 8 chambers, some will have 2 chambers, some will have just 1 chamber, some will have 16, 18 chambers. So it depends which flower we are talking about. For example, you are also very much aware, if I talk about mango, on 1 ovule, 1 seed. I talk about jackfruit, so many ovules, so many seeds. So ovule are nothing but chambers of the ovary which can be variable in flowers, which is variable. It's not a constant number. But whatever it is, the ovule also has got a single cell, and this ovule will undergo meiosis 2 times. Meiotic division twice. This is different from this male gamete formation, and hence the female gamete will result in the ovule will result in the formation of 8 gametes at a time. See there, I've already drawn 3, 3, 6 and 8. So there. Now here, when I talk about which are the 8 gametes, what are their names? 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, 6, 7 and 8. I will write down the names here because I don't want to make the diagram clumsy there. These gametes are known as the antipodals. These are known as the antipodals. These are known as the polar nuclei. These are known as polar nuclei. This is known as the egg cell, and that is the biggest and the most potential gamete in the flower. And these two are known as the synergids. Take a note. The gametes in the ovule. What are the gametes in the same thing we'll have to label here also when you draw the diagram, but I'm just showing you separately so that you're very clear. Here, for the male and the female gametes, because it is a concept of sexual reproduction, so definitely we'll have to be very clear about which are the male and which are the female gametes and then the process. So now, if it is the male gamete, how many male gamete does one pollen grain give rise to?
2 male.
2 male gamete. How many male gamete will one pollen grain give rise to? 2 male gamete. And how many female gamete are we talking about? 8.
8.
Yes. How many female gamete? 8. And out of those, which is the most prominent gamete? egg cells. Clear है? Now, how are those? From one single nucleus of the ovule. Since meiotic division happens twice, so 4 and then 4 again. That's how we see 8 here. So which are the names of the gametes? Check the words. The gametes at the anterior end, meaning above. Anterior end, antipodons. 2 in the center, polar nuclei. The biggest, largest gamete, egg cell. And 2 present on the lateral sides of the egg cell, on the sides of the egg cell, synergids. So how many types of gametes for the female? 4 types. Number is 8. 8, but types 4. Which are those? Antipodons, polar nuclei, egg cell, synergids. Clear? Now we are more or less okay with the types of the gametes, the number of the gametes. So now the process of double fertilization that we are going to study will be 2 male gametes and 8 female gametes. And we have to find out how the process of fertilization happens. So now in this diagram, if I continue, we'll have to see now that how does the pollen start growing inside the flower, utilizing the nutrients of the style. So this particular pollen will start growing, and then the pollen tube will be formed, and that is a concept of chemotropism we had studied earlier also, if you remember. This diagram did you draw? हाँ तो खाली ये कंप्लीट करना है, pollen tube खाली बना लो. Okay. Nothing, no need to draw it again. नहीं, this diagram meaning the flower you are saying. The this previous
no
flower diagram.
Flower diagram is made already. You remember this one?
I did not explain only.
No, the part.
ये वाला चीज. हाँ, I'll tell you again. Double fertilization मैंने explain नहीं किया. ये जो diagram है, this you will have to draw. ये both the diagrams. एक है section of the flower which we had drawn, वो अलग है, and section of the carpel अलग है. That's another diagram which is there in your syllabus.
No, I meant the line. We have to draw this in this diagram.
हाँ, पर ये इतना छोटा क्यों है? नहीं, वो पर बहुत छोटा है वो. That diagram, in that diagram, the female gametes should be very clearly shown.
Like this.
अच्छा, तुम लोगों को इतना छोटा छोटा डायग्राम्स क्यों ड्रॉ करना है? हाँ, yours is still okay. Without my specs, I can see. Diagram always half a page. Always मैंने एक estimate हमेशा तुम लोगों को दिया है. Diagram मतलब half a page ड्रॉ करना ही है. Okay, this also can be little bit bigger. Diagram half a page draw करना है. Here the pollen tube, the male gamete and all this, even the micropyle should be very well marked. See, I'm going to mark the micropyle now. So if you draw small, if you are drawing ये सारा चीज congested हो जा रहा है. And the paper characters are all above 50-55, huh? So remember that. So they are not going to adjust their specs and give you marks. नहीं समझ में आया है, काटो, खत्म. So this micropyle also has to be clear. Okay, so now when we are talking about this, let us label this one. I finished with the pollen tube first. Try understand the diagram, कैसे क्या draw करना है, then you will be able to understand how to place the parts in the diagram. This is the pollen tube which will grow, and it will grow and come till the micropyle. Which is the micropyle? इस diagram में micropyle भी draw करना है. This opening, can you see this opening? दिख रहा है? This opening of the ovule, this opening of the ovule is known as micropyle. Micropyle is a major structure for the seed later when we say. Okay, and then now this nucleus, now I am only drawing the pollen. तो ये न्यूक्लियस नहीं ड्रॉ करेंगे. आई वांट टू ड्रॉ द मेल गैमेट. कितने मेल गैमेट्स मुझे पोलन ट्यूब में ड्रॉ करना है? 2. So 2 male gametes I will draw. Labeling only the male and the female parts. I label only the male and the female parts. So what are these? I have drawn this. These are the male gametes. These parts I am not labeling at all. All these parts just now get labeled. So this is the stigma, this is the style, this is the ovary. So only the prominent parts we will label. We don't need to label all the parts in this diagram. The stigma, this is the style, and this is the ovary. The female gametes, I am not labeling here, but when you are drawing the diagram, ye jo sare labelings I have shown, this also has to be in the same diagram. Here I am showing you separately. Okay. Now, listen here. What I explained you this, listen here again. What I said, I start with the anther. The anther have produced all these pollen. But how will this pollen form the male gamete? This pollen, which is having one nucleus, will first of all undergo one mitosis, forming 2 nuclei. What are the names? Generative and vegetative. After some time, or by this time, pollen tube also has started forming, which will keep on absorbing the nutrients and still keep on growing. Now, these 2 nucleus, that is the generative and the vegetative, out of this, the generative will continue division, the vegetative will not. The vegetative nucleus is basically to provide nourishment during the formation of the male gametes, meaning when the generative nucleus is dividing, some nutrition has to be provided. So the vegetative nucleus. So this generative is divided again one more time, forming 2 more nuclei. So the male gametes are formed from the vegetative or the generative? Generative nucleus, not from the vegetative at all. Because see here, 2 male gametes and the vegetative still there. But if I have to draw the next diagram, in the next diagram I will not show the vegetative because by now the male gametes are fully formed. Now see in this also we haven't drawn the vegetative nucleus. We don't draw the vegetative nucleus once the male gametes are fully formed. What about the female? One single ovule. What is this cell I am drawing? I am drawing one single ovule with one nucleus. So this particular nucleus is dividing. Meiosis, but twice I say. That is the method. Meiosis, agar 1 hoga to 4 cell. Meiosis once produces 4 cells. We are already seen earlier also. So I am saying meiosis twice. So definitely 8 cells has to be formed. 8 nuclei has to be formed. And yes, it is. So wahi same ovule mein there are 8 nuclei now, 8 gametes now. What are the names? 3 antipodals, 2 polar nuclei, 1 big egg cell and synergids. Okay? So now we have got 8 female gametes, 2 male gametes. Arrangement in the flower is like this. We need to understand now the process of double fertilization. What are the steps? What are the phases? Double fertilization, the first step that takes place, the first phase that takes place is known as fertilization or syngamy. What is happening here? The first male gamete, check here with the figure, the first male gamete will take a pathway this way towards the micropyle. The first male gamete is constantly moving by the way of the pollen tube and starts entering through the micropyle. What is micropyle? It's a small opening at the ovule, at the base of the ovule. Why is it so? For the entry of the male gametes. Otherwise, how will the male gametes enter the ovule? So there's a small opening left at the base of the ovule so that the male gametes one by one can enter. So what about the first male gamete? I understand that this first male gamete is moving and this first male gamete has come in contact with the moment it moves towards the micropyle, which will be the first gamete that it will come across? The egg cell, because the egg cell is just near the micropyle. So yes, the egg cell and this male gamete, they come together. The nuclear content fused. Now that the nuclear content fused, there is no egg cell and the male gamete anything separate. So a process known as fertilization has happened. And as a result of fertilization, what has happened? A big cell has been formed. What are we going to term this big cell as? This is a zygote which has formed. The first male gamete and the egg cell, fertilization over, resulting in the formation of zygote. So what is fertilization? Fertilization is the fusion of the first male gamete and egg cell which results in the formation of the zygote, which results in the formation of a zygote. What is a zygote? A single cell formed after fertilization. आया समझ में? Clear है? What is zygote? A single cell formed by the fusion of the first male gamete and the egg cell. But ये जो zygote है, this zygote will not remain like this for long. The zygote is a single cell. It is diploid or haploid? Diploid now because two gametes. एक male gamete था and एक egg cell था, and then these two cells have come together with their haploid sets of chromosomes. So abhi zygote has become diploid. Can it carry out the process of cell division and growth on its own? Yes, it can. So this zygote will start immediately the process of cell division and growth. Something like, if I understand that this is the zygote, this zygote will progressively undergo the process of cell division, and dhire dhire we get to see that it will ultimately, there are various stages, and ultimately it will form an multicellular structure known as the embryo. Clear? So now, during the process of formation of this embryo, what is happening? During the process of formation of this embryo, these synergies which are there, which has got a small amount of cytoplasm, reserve food in the nucleus, all these is being used up. The synergids never participate in the process of fusion, fertilization at all. So this synergids slowly will be used up. Why is the synergids getting used up? Because this zygote is now getting transformed into a multicellular structure, and it needs nutrition for cell division. So it is utilizing the nutrients of the synergids. The nucleus, the cytoplasm which is loaded with nutrients are all used up. By this time, the second male gamete also will make its entry. The second male gamete also starts entering into the ovule. The second male gamete also starts entering, we'll just take another 2-3 minutes. The second male gamete also starts entering the ovule. But by this time, these two polar nuclei, they have fused to form one single cell, and this is known as the secondary nucleus. So that means this male gamete, it will approach and go and meet the secondary nucleus now. Clear hai? So the second male gamete was entering the ovule. By the time the two polar nuclei had fused together, forming the secondary nucleus, and in the meantime, what also happens is the second male gamete goes and fuses. So secondary nucleus and the second male gamete, this is what is happening. And this will now result in the formation of a structure, and that is known as endosperm. So this is now no more there. Rather, it is a big cell with 3 nuclear components. Yes or no? Polar nuclei ke 2. और second male gamete का तीन nuclear components आ गया एक साथ. That's the reason this step is also known as triple fusion. What is it? This is known as triple fusion. What is triple fusion? What does it give rise to? Triple fusion is the fusion of the second male gamete, with the secondary nucleus, forming the endosperm. So now these three nuclei coming together. So what are we going to name this as? This is the endosperm now. We will not name it as the secondary nucleus or anything. This is just the endosperm. So what is prominent in the nucleus now? एक endosperm है और एक embryo है. Okay, just 2 more minutes. We'll complete. Just few things to understand. And this is a very important concept. Try to follow also. So now, after both the male gametes utilized, what is the situation inside the ovule? एक बड़ा सा endosperm है और एक बड़ा सा embryo है. अभी whether the embryo will keep dividing and growing much faster or the endosperm will divide much faster, ये depend करेगा based on whether this flower is of a monocot or a dicot plant. Monocot मतलब like rice, maize, corn. अगर rice, maize, corn मतलब monocot अगर है, then endosperm develop करेगा much more than embryo. और अगर dicot plants है, according to your syllabus we are studying dicot, that is the pea, gram. अगर इस तरह के plants है majorly, then the embryo will start developing and endosperm धीरे-धीरे shrink हो जाएगा, providing nourishment. So since we are studying dicot concepts according to your syllabus, so what is happening? Now the embryo will start developing much faster, utilizing the nutrient of the endosperm and antipodal sara. मतलब the entire space of the ovule will be occupied by the embryo forming the seed. So then after some time, what would the condition be? The condition is something like this. The entire structure is filled up, multicellular structure. And what is this multicellular structure? This entire multicellular structure is now known as, we don't have anything known as the endosperm now. And this entire zygote which has got converted into the embryo now is getting converted into the seed. And lastly, now what to understand? This seed, can you see the outer green cover? Yes. So ovule, the entire outer cover of the ovule, that will form the seed coat. That will form the seed coat. And by that time, this upper parts of the ovule, the carpel, all these parts will dry out. All these parts will dry out and shrivel off. So what are we left with is this entire part of the ovary. Pollen tube and all these structures will dry out. They will fall off. Does the micropyle exist? Yes, the micropyle exists. So ये जो ovary था, this ovary wall, what did this ovary ultimately give rise to? The ovary has formed the fruit. What did this ovary wall give rise to? This is the peel of the fruit, pericarp. What is this edible part of the fruit? The mesocarp. And then we have got the seed, that is the endocarp. What did this ovule give rise to now?
Seed.
What did this entire ovary got transformed into?
Fruit.
The fruit. So the ovule got transformed into the seed from the ovule and the ovary fruit. These are the most important things to always note. In majority of the seeds, the micropyle is still existing. The micropyle is still there. If you have the gram and the chana, rajma seeds at home today, please go and check. On the upper region, now this is the seed, on the upper region of the seed at the conical end, we will see a small opening, quite prominent. And that's the opening when we soak the seeds in water. That's the micropyle, which absorbs a huge amount of water, allowing the seeds to get soaked. So micropyle, does it exist in a fully formed seed? Yes, it exists, and it has got functions for exchange of gases, absorption of water. So what are the two phases we had studied? Double fertilization. Why the method? Double fertilization? Because fusion is happening twice. Pehla ye, uske baad
Yes.
clear? Go through from the volume also. All these points are clear. The next class again I'll ask you some questions on this, and we'll start with the next concepts of the chapter.
Good luck, my good luck. Bye bye.
Okay? नहीं अच्छा ओके ओके पागल है तू नहीं ये खुल जाता है पता नहीं क्या कर रही है मैं जल्दी अरे भाई कैसा ब्लर आता है उसमें ये नहीं वन एक्स में ले रहा है ये क्या है अबे लेक्चर कितने बजे स्टार्ट होगा 40
8 मिनट ही बाकी है।
मेरे को नीचे ना आना दो है
11 o'clock में start होगा।
बाद में एक्स्ट्रा लेट है मुझे नहीं पता मैं
अभी
जॉली है
जॉली
है ना
हाँ आई गेस
हाँ जॉली है मैंने पढ़ा था
मैंने भी पढ़ा जॉली हाँ जॉली है
मुझे पैसा जॉली पेपर करेक्ट करवाना है वो तो पूरे मेरे 5
तो वॉशरूम ना तो पे
क्या मर जाओ तुम तो
बच्चे आ
थोड़े नहीं मेरे
हाँ बैग दे
ये
और मैं चॉकलेट वो चॉकलेट
ना नीचे
वो हेलीकॉप्टर
को बोल रहा मैं नीचे ही हूँ
हाँ
राइट